Welcome back, dear friends. In the last video, I introduced you the concept of compressors in HVAC systems. I had given you an overview of the compressors in HVAC systems. The objective of today's lecture is to give you an overview of expansion devices in HVAC systems. All the components of HVAC systems, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems. As a design engineer, we should be in a position to design those. But before designing those, before sizing those, before deciding the capacity of those, we need to also have an idea of or overview of what are those devices. So the objective is not to explain you the design of expansion devices, but to give you an overview of the expansion devices used in HVAC systems. So this is the limited objective of this video. Some other day I would explain you the sizing of expansion devices also. So expansion devices, why are they used in refrigeration systems? They are used in refrigeration systems for, obviously as the name indicates, to expand the refrigerant from the condenser pressure to the evaporator pressure. So why do we use the expansion devices? That would be clear as an outcome of this course, of this video. The commonly used expansion devices which you see in the market, namely the capillary tube, automatic expansion valve, and thermostatic expansion valve, they would be explained in brief. There is also one more valve which is found in the market, namely float valve, that I will just touch upon. Literally, I will be touching upon that. And then we would just go and understand when a particular expansion device is used in the market for a particular application. That is the objective. As I said, the objective of using an expansion device in a refrigeration system obviously is to lower the pressure from the condenser pressure to the evaporator pressure. That is called as expansion. The second important objective is to meter the refrigerant. Metering means what? Metering means to supply the refrigerant in appropriate quantity in the evaporator. You know that in a refrigeration system, we get refrigerating effect in the evaporator. So evaporator is a place where the load on the refrigeration systems is occupied. So the load on the refrigeration system is to be overcome by expansion of the refrigerant from the condenser pressure to the evaporator pressure, and the liquid vapor mixture which is at the entry of the evaporator, that is evaporated, takes up the load. The refrigerant is evaporated by taking the heat, and then it goes to the compressor. So ideally, we expect that the mass flow rate at the entry to the evaporator, at the exit to the evaporator, at the entry to the compressor, at the exit to the compressor, at the exit of the condenser, and at the exit of the expansion devices, all this mass flow rate is the same. When the mass flow rates happen to be same, then it is called a steady flow system. However, in practice, you will find that sometimes the mass flow rates would change, and that is because the refrigerators or the air conditioner has to cater to varying loads. So how the expansion devices function, that we are going to see in this video, especially when the loads change, whether they are appropriate for varying loads or not. That would be an important topic of discussion. So as I said, the important ones which we'll be discussing are the capillary tube, the automatic expansion valve, and thermostatic expansion valve. This is a sketch of a capillary tube. You have seen the capillary tube in small test rigs. You have seen the capillary tube in the household refrigerator. You would see them in small capacity AC systems. So this is a commonly used capillary tube. And as the name indicates, it is a tube and it is of a smaller size. So please note that though the name is a capillary tube, there is no capillary action in this tube. Okay, it is simply a long tube of a smaller bore. Bore means inner diameter, and that is what is the construction of it. You see in this sketch, it is a copper tube of a long, very long, you see very long length and a very small diameter. That's it. One end of it is obviously connected to the condenser, and the other end obviously has to be connected to the expansion device. So to get you an idea of how long the capillary tube is and how small the diameter is, I just give you a figure. For example, a typical 1-ton AC air conditioning system would have a length of the capillary equal to about greater than 2 meters. So the exact length is given here, 2.4 meters. The typical bore, the typical inner diameter of that tube is very small. See, look at this. How much is that? So it is about 2.3 mm. So the bore is in mm and the length is in meters. That gives you an idea about the capillary tube. Obviously, we can have number of combinations of the bore and length. So I can change the length and accordingly the bore changes. The objective is to see that there is a pressure drop, reasonable pressure drop between the condenser and the evaporator. That is how the capillary tube is designed. So capillary tube design means what? Capillary tube design means we need to choose the length of the capillary tube and we need to finalize the bore of the capillary tube so that the required pressure drop is achieved. That is what it is. Design of capillary tube. As I said, we are not going to discuss how to design the capillary tube in this video. As I already explained, capillary tube connects the condenser directly to the evaporator. The job of the capillary tube is to have a pressure drop from the condenser pressure to evaporator pressure. So how much would the refrigerant flow? What would be the flow rate of the refrigerant in the capillary tube? That is a function of what is the pressure of the condenser and what is the pressure of the evaporator. So if the pressure difference is large, there is a huge pressure difference, the mass flow rate would increase. If the pressure difference changes, if it reduces, the mass flow rate would reduce. So this is one of the parameter which would influence the mass flow rate. How much pressure drop one achieves? What is the pressure drop which we get in the capillary tube of a given bore and given length? That depends on two things. What are the two things? Two parameters. One is what is the friction the refrigerant encounters. What is the friction the refrigerant encounters because of its viscosity? So the viscous fluid, that is the refrigerant, as it flows through the narrow constriction, that is the narrow tube, then it would experience the pressure drop because of friction. So this is one reason why there is a pressure drop, that is friction. And second is because at the entry, you know that at the entry to the expansion device, that is at the exit of the condenser, right? At the exit of the condenser, the refrigerant is a liquid refrigerant. And when it passes through the narrow constriction and as it experiences the pressure drop, we know that at the end of the expansion device, there is the liquid plus vapor. So this liquid plus vapor, we are getting some vapor out of liquid, it's called as flashing. So flashing would result in acceleration because once it is vapor, the velocity would increase. So conversion of liquid to vapor increases the velocity when changes the velocity. And thus the flashing of liquid vapor in the liquid refrigerant into some vapor would result in acceleration of the refrigerant. So as the refrigerant flows through the narrow constriction, because of flashing of the liquid refrigerant into vapor, it accelerates, and that acceleration also causes the pressure drop. So the pressure drop from the condenser pressure to the evaporator pressure happens because of one, the friction, and second, because of the flashing, which results in acceleration. This has to be kept in mind. Now, this capillary tube, because the pressure drop gets fixed, once the bore is fixed and the length is fixed, right? So it is not suitable for the variable load. Variable load means change in load. Why is that? Why is it that so? Why is the capillary tube not suitable for variable load? Or what is the disadvantage of capillary tube? So for that, to understand that, let us assume that on the refrigeration system or air conditioning system, load increases. Load increases means the cooling effort required increases. So when the load increases, then the refrigerant would boil more. There would be more boiling of the refrigerant. More boiling as compared to what is required by the compressor. So when the mass flow rate of the refrigerant changes, vis-a-vis what is required by the compressor, accordingly the change in the pressure would happen. So when the evaporator pressure increases, with the load increases, right, then the starving of evaporator would happen, because if the mass flow rate decreases, then the evaporator would be starved. Starved means there would be less amount of refrigerant in the evaporator. Similarly, when the load would decrease, the refrigerant would accumulate in the evaporator, and there is a flooding of evaporator. It means that in response to the load changes, the evaporator either would be starved of the refrigerant, there would be less refrigerant in the evaporator, or it would be flooded with the refrigerant. That is, there would be excess of refrigerant in the evaporator. Now, flooding is more dangerous because when there is a flooding of refrigerant in the evaporator, the liquid refrigerant would enter the compressor, and when it enters the compressor, it might damage the compressor. So flooding has to be avoided. Now, how is this avoided? Because that is the disadvantage of capillarity. What are the disadvantages? It would either starve the evaporator, or it would flood the evaporator, and that is in response to load changes. What is done is, in order to avoid the flooding, these systems where the capillary tubes are used, for example, domestic refrigerator, we use two things. One is we use hermetically sealed compressor, and second is we charge those systems critically. Critically means the amount of refrigerant in the evaporator is such that even when the refrigerant floods, the refrigerant would not enter the compressor. So critically charged means the size of the volume of the evaporator is such that it can hold the required amount of charge even when the entire amount of refrigerant gets into the evaporator. That is called critically charged. So this is the most important. That is why I highlighted it. It has to be critically charged. If you don't critically charge, if you charge more, then there would be flooding, and that might damage the compressor. Second is, because we are critically charging the system, if there is a leakage, then that might create deficiency of the refrigerant, and then the refrigeration system or the air conditioning system won't be able to cater to the loads. So that is the reason why we need to make sure that the refrigerant does not leak. And when it will not leak, if you have a compressor which is hermetically sealed. So this we need to keep in mind, that with capillary tube, one needs to have a critically charged system, and second is the compressors need to be hermetically sealed, and that is the disadvantage that has arisen because it is not good at varying loads. The advantage of capillary tube is that it is simple, obviously, low cost, obviously, and the third thing, which is not very obvious, is that the starting torque of the motor can be low. Why is that so? The reason is because when the system is shut off, when the compressor is shut off, because there is a capillary tube, it is a simple tube which is connecting the condenser and evaporator. When the compressor is not on, the pressure in the condenser it equalizes with the pressure in the evaporator. So entire system comes under one pressure. So the pressure difference, there is no pressure difference, and hence the evaporator is not a lower pressure. So when you are starting the compressor, the pressure delta P, which the compressor handles initially, is lower. And when the delta P, which is handled handled by the compressor, is lower, the starting torque is lower. So when the starting torque is lower, we can use a motor which is having a low starting torque. This becomes an advantage of capillary tube. The other expansion valve. Now, what is the difference between the automatic expansion valve, which we are going to discuss, and the capillary tube, which was discussed earlier? You find that in the capillary tube, you cannot change the bore or the constriction through which the refrigerant flows. In the other two valves, which I am going to explain you, will find that the passage through which the refrigerant flows, that area, that diameter, or that cross-sectional area can be changed, and this can be changed by using a needle arrangement. So an automatic expansion valve is a variable restriction valve. That is, the restriction can be changed by using a needle arrangement. Now again, how is the expansion wall connected? Obviously, the automatic expansion wall is connected between what? Between the condenser through which the refrigerant flows and between the evaporator through which the liquid and vapor flows out. Okay, see why there is a vapor? Because there is some flashing. So at the entry, the pressure is higher. It has to be a condenser pressure, and at the exit of the wall, the pressure has to be lower, and it has to be equal to the evaporator pressure. That is after expansion. Now, what is an arrangement of this expansion wall? You see the physical construction. You'll find that there is a diaphragm. This diaphragm is exposed to two different pressures. At the top, it is almost atmospheric pressure plus the pressure which is exerted by the adjustment spring, or it is also called as a regulating spring. So on this, there are two pressures which are acting. One is the pressure exerted by this regulating spring, and the other is the pressure in this space which is equal to the atmospheric pressure. The second, on the other side of this diaphragm, the pressure is exerted by the refrigerant. Okay. So the pressure is exerted by the refrigerant, and which refrigerant exerts the pressure? It is equal to the pressure exerted by the refrigerant in the evaporator. So this automatic expansion wall in a way regulates the pressure in the evaporator. So what is the job of the automatic expansion wall? It is also called as constant pressure wall. Its job is to maintain the pressure in the evaporator constant. So constant pressure is maintained in the evaporator because of this arrangement. And how is that happening? It is basically happening because of the pressure balance which is created. So the pressure exerted on the diaphragm from the upward side and the pressure which is exerted from beneath because of the evaporator pressure. So this has to be understood. So this spring and this diaphragm adjust in a way such that the pressure in the evaporator always remains constant. Please note that it's not shown, but there has to be a strainer here in the inlet of this diaphragm of this expansion wall. Okay, these diaphragms could also be replaced by bellows, and this spring performs an important function. Spring and adjustment screw performs an important function to adjust the pressure on this diaphragm. This has to be noted. So what happens? What happens because of this upward force or upward force? This upward force, when you just look at this diagram, if there is a force which is exerted upwards, what will happen? This push rod would be moved upwards. When the push rod moves upwards, this needle would move towards the seat. When the needle moves towards the seat, you just look at this diagram. When there is upward force, this needle would try to close the wall. So when the wall closes, the refrigerant flow would be reduced. So the job of the upward force is to close the wall. Now what does the downward force do? So the downward force, imagine that there is a downward force. So this downward force, which is exerted by the atmosphere and by the spring, this would tend to open this, and this is again obvious from the diagram. This would be put downwards. When it puts downwards, you see that this tapered portion comes in contact with this, and this smaller portion comes in contact with this. This wall will in a way open. So by downward force, the wall tends to open. By the upward force, the wall tends to close. And this upward and downward forces, they are adjusted in a way that the pressure inside the evaporator is maintained constant. What happens when the load decreases? When the load decreases, now what is the disadvantage of this? That is what I am trying. The advantage is that it maintains constant pressure. But how it responds to the load, that has to be clearly understood. So load decreases, what would happen? When the load would decrease, the evaporator pressure would decrease. When the evaporator pressure would decrease, the evaporator pressure is which pressure? It is the upward pressure. When the upward pressure would decrease, that is when the upward pressure would decrease, the evaporator pressure would decrease, the upward pressure would decrease, and the pressure which is downwards, that would be more. When it would be more, what would happen is this push rod would pull this downwards. When it pulls downwards, this wall would tend to open. When the wall would tend to open, the more refrigerant would flow. Now, this is very interesting. In fact, this is the disadvantage. You look at this. I'll try to repeat this again. When the load decreases, what we are expecting is, what should happen ideally is, when the load decreases, the refrigerant flow should decrease. Obviously, if the load decreases, the refrigerant in the evaporator should be less. If the load increases, the refrigerant in the evaporator should be more. But exactly the opposite happens in the automatic expansion valve. What happens is, when the load decreases, the valve tends to open. When the load decreases, the valve tends to open and more refrigerant flows into the evaporator. More refrigerant flows into the evaporator. So actually the refrigerant floods. When the load increases, now what should happen ideally when the load increases? When the load increases, the refrigerant flow should increase. But what happens here is that when the load increases, the evaporator pressure increases. When the evaporator pressure increases, means the upward pressure increases. Upward pressure increases means the valve tends to close. When the valve tends to close, it means that the refrigerant flow through this would tend to decrease. And when the less refrigerant flows into this, the evaporator gets starved. So it is just the opposite way it is functioning. So this is the most important disadvantage, that it is not suitable for varying load. For varying load, it is totally inappropriate. But then why are we using automatic expansion valve? The disadvantage we had said. What is the disadvantage? The disadvantage is that it does not cater to varying load. In fact, it behaves exactly the opposite, the way it should behave for varying load. So this is the disadvantage. So what is the advantage of this? The advantage is that it maintains the pressure constant. So what is so great about it, that if it maintains the pressure constant, why is it an advantage? It is an advantage because in some applications, for example, if you talk about water coolers, or if you talk about milk coolers, we need the temperature to be constant. Temperature to be constant, and that temperature should not fall below the freezing point. For example, if we use some other wall, and if in response to the load change, there is a fall in the evaporator pressure or fall in the evaporator temperature, and if it falls below the freezing point, then the water would freeze and the tubes would burst. So that should not happen. So in that case, this kind of was become handy. Means what they would do, they would not allow the evaporator pressure to change. So the evaporator temperature will not change. If the evaporator temperature will not change, and if the evaporator temperature is maintained above the freezing point of the water, then the water coolers would function appropriately. So this is an advantage. And that is why we find that automatic expansion valves are useful in water coolers and milk coolers. The third important valve, which is widely used in refrigeration systems and air conditioning systems, that is called as a thermostatic expansion valve. It is also called as a TX expansion valve. Now, what is this valve and how is it different from the automatic expansion valve? So, thermostatic expansion valve is similar to automatic expansion valve with the difference. And what is the difference that I'll be handing? That this difference in construction comes from the use of a bulb over here, and that bulb is filled with a working fluid, or it is called as a power fluid, and it could be the same fluid which as the refrigerant which is used in the system, or it could be some other fluid. So that is called as a power fluid which is in the bulb, and this bulb is connected to the outlet, and this outlet would maintain the degree of superheat. Now I'll come to that whenever with this. This is a pictorial representation, but with the schematic it would be more clear. Look at this. What you'll find is the construction arrangement. So this is the capillary tube which I had shown, and this is the feeler bulb or power bulb, and this power bulb is connected to the suction line of the evaporator. So similar to this is the bulb which is connected to the suction line of the evaporator, right? So this is the inlet. Inlet means what? Inlet from the condenser, and this is the outlet, which is nothing but the suction line of the evaporator. Suction line of the evaporator, what do you find? Suction line of the evaporator, you find the feeler bulb connected. And how is it connected? By using the capillary tube. So using the capillary tube, we are connecting the bulb. And what is there in this bulb? There is a fluid in the bulb. Okay, it could be the refrigerant also. So this is again a simple diagram. Okay, filler bulb, this capillary tube. Okay, and this is a diaphragm now. This is a diaphragm, and this diaphragm, similar to your expansion wall, would be acted upon by two different pressures: the upward pressure and the downward pressure. Now, what is the difference between this wall and the other wall, that is automatic expansion wall? There is a correction actually. This is not the automatic expansion wall. This is the diagram of thermostatic expansion wall. Okay. The title is misleading. Whatever I'm discussing is not the automatic expansion wall. It is a thermostatic expansion wall. So now what happens in this thermostatic expansion wall? You'll find that you maintain a constant degree of superheat for control. Constant degree of superheat. What is degree of superheat? Degree of superheat means what? At the exit of the evaporator, at the exit of this thermostatic expansion wall, you'll find that this refrigerant exiting the evaporator is slightly superheated. Ideally, we know that the refrigerant entering the compressor or exiting the evaporator is dry saturated, but in actual practice, it is superheated. So what we do is that we maintain certain degree of superheat in the suction line, and this degree of superheat is in contact with the filler bulb. So this filler bulb can tell you how much is the degree of superheat, and this filler bulb refrigerant would accordingly behave depending upon the change in the degree of superheat. Now what happens is that there is a force. There is a force which is exerted by this power fluid or refrigerant in this bulb. Okay, so the downward force which is on the diaphragm, look at this. There is a downward force in this diaphragm. So the downward force which is exerted on the diaphragm is coming via this capillary tube, and it is exerted by the refrigerant in the filler bulb. So in this thermostatic expansion wall, not the automatic expansion wall which is written here, in the thermostatic expansion wall, the filler bulb has a refrigerant, and this refrigerant is going to exert the downward force on the diaphragm. Okay, which is unlike your automatic expansion wall, which is unlike your automatic expansion wall, because in the automatic expansion wall it is the atmospheric pressure which is exerted on the diaphragm along with the regulating spring pressure. So here there is no regulating spring, you see, on the upward side, and there is no atmospheric pressure which is acting over here. It is the pressure which is exerted by the refrigerant in this filler bulb on the upside, and on the downward side it is again similar to what is in the automatic expansion wall. So in the downward side, it is what? It is a pressure which is exerted by the refrigerant in the evaporator, as well as the pressure which is exerted by this spring, self-adjusting spring or self-adjusting screw. So this is the source of the upward pressure, and the downward pressure on the diaphragm is exerted because of the refrigerant in the filler bulb. This has to be noted. So what happens is that how it behaves. Again, I'm saying that this is not the automatic expansion wall. We are talking about thermostatic expansion wall. So how does this behave? So this thermostatic expansion wall, it also behaves with respect to the load changes, but this behaves very intelligently. Unlike the stupid behavior, I say, stupid behavior of the automatic expansion wall. What is the stupid behavior of the automatic expansion wall? In the automatic expansion wall, with the increase in the load, actually the evaporator stops, and with the decrease in the load, the refrigerant in the evaporator increases, and the evaporator floods. So that is not desirable. Here, what happens is that here with the increase in the load, if there is the increase in the load, the refrigerant would evaporate faster. If the refrigerant would evaporate faster, right, and the degree of superheat would increase. And if the degree of superheat would increase, the wall would open more. And the wall opens more, and that is what is required. So what should happen is, if the load increases, the wall should open more. What happens in the automatic expansion wall? When the load increases, the wall opens less. In the thermostatic expansion wall, when the load increases, the wall opens more. When the wall opens more, the refrigerant would increase, and the refrigerant increases. So when the refrigerant increases, the increased load is taken care of, And when the increased load is taken care of, the degree of superheat would decrease again to the set value. So suppose we are setting the value to 5 degrees centigrade. 5 degrees centigrade. When the load increases, let us say the degree of superheat would change to 5 to 6 degrees centigrade. Why would that change? Because the refrigerant would evaporate faster in response to the load increase. When the refrigerant evaporates faster and the degree of superheat increases from 5 degrees to 6 degrees centigrade, what would happen now? That would be sensed by the bulb. Okay, that would be sensed by the bulb. So 5 to 6 degrees centigrade would be sensed by the bulb. So when it is sensed by the bulb, the this would be sensed by there will be change in the pressure on the diaphragm. So when there is a change in the pressure on the diaphragm, okay, there is an increase in the pressure on the diaphragm, this push rod will be pushed downwards. So when this is pushed downwards, what you will say is that you will say that more refrigerant enters. When the more refrigerant enters, as I said, when the more refrigerant enters, okay, and when this more refrigerant enters in this evaporator, the degree of superheat is again maintained. So once again, I'll repeat what happens. So what happens is, if the load increases, if the load on this evaporator increases, okay, and please listen this carefully. I'm repeating this again. If the load on this evaporator increases, the refrigerant would evaporate faster. If the refrigerant evaporates faster, the degree of superheat would increase. So if initially the degree of superheat was 5 degrees centigrade, let us say it increases to 6 degrees centigrade. So when the degree of superheat increases, what would happen is that the pressure inside this would increase. Pressure exerted by the refrigerant or the fluid in this filler bulb would increase, and this increased pressure would now be exerted on this diaphragm. So when there is increased pressure on this diaphragm, this wall would tend to open. So when this wall would tend to open, more liquid refrigerant would flow through this evaporator. Now when there is more liquid refrigerant entering this evaporator, automatically the degree of superheat will now readjust back to the 5 degrees centigrade. So that is very interesting. How this behaves? Well, there is an increase in the load, it would increase the refrigerant flow into the evaporator. Similarly, when there is a decrease in the load, this pressure would decrease. This wall would be pulled upwards. There would be decrease in the refrigerant flow to the evaporator, and again the degree of superheat would adjust itself. So this is a very intelligent wall in the sense that it is intelligent to cater to the varying load. So this thermostatic expansion wall has an advantage over this automatic expansion wall. What is the advantage of thermostatic expansion wall over automatic expansion wall? The thermostatic expansion wall has an advantage that it can cater to varying loads. Right? If this is clear to you, you have understood the concept of expansion wall. So expansion wall, thermostatic expansion wall, performs both the functions of the expansion wall very intelligently. It meters the refrigerant according to the load, unlike the other two walls. And second is, it drops the pressure from the condenser pressure to the lower pressure, that is evaporator pressure, intelligently. Right? That is why this thermostatic expansion wall is widely used. The last wall I'll just touch upon is called as a float wall. This float wall is the wall which maintains constant level either in the evaporator or in the condenser. So if it maintains constant level in the evaporators by using again the varying needle wall arrangement, if it maintains constant level in the evaporator, because it is also a variable restriction wall like the thermostatic expansion wall or automatic expansion wall, and it is unlike the capillary tube. Capillary tube has a constant restriction. So this also has a varying restriction. It has a needle wall and a seat, and this wall would, the needle would move up and down, and accordingly the restriction would change. And if this float wall maintains constant level in the evaporator, is called as a low side float wall. Low side means evaporator is low side. And if it maintains a constant level in the condenser, it is called as a high side flow wall. So this completes my introduction to the expansion devices. So to summarize, I had discussed 4 expansion devices. There are few more expansion devices, but widely used expansion devices are discussed. One is the most popular one, smaller, beautiful capillary tube. The second one is the automatic expansion valve. It's automatic in the sense that it maintains the evaporator pressure automatically constant. So it is called as the automatic expansion valve. The disadvantage I said of automatic expansion valve as well as of capillary tube is that both are incapable of catering to the variable loads. Then who caters to the variable loads? The most important device which caters to the variable load is the thermostatic expansion valve. It intelligently meters the refrigerant flow and it intelligently drops the pressure from the condenser pressure to the evaporator pressure. So intelligently in the sense that thermostatic expansion valve, if the load falls, it would increase the flow to the evaporator. It will decrease the flow to the evaporator. If the load increases, it will increase the refrigerant flow to the evaporator. Okay, so this completes our introduction to expansion devices. Hope you have enjoyed this. Thank you very much.